Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to our brand new series through the Global PAD Association's network called Faith and Healing. Now, it might be a little deceiving in terms of the title. This is not to be considered a religious series. It's a series that we hope will inspire hope and offer faith in your own power, cause patience to maybe find healing within yourself. And through this series, we are going to be interviewing physicians and clinicians and patients about their real world experiences in which they found a little mystery and care. Our first doctor that we are bringing on today to feature is Dr. Diana Londoño, a holistic urologist from Los Angeles, California, to share a very powerful story of faith and healing that I hope will provide hope for so many of you out there. Hi, Dr. Londoño. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm so blessed and honored to be here on this first episode of the series. And I think it's such an important topic to discuss. So I think it's going to be, very valuable to bring this to light, to not sort of keep it on the dark. That is so important to so many people. And it's, again, not about religion. It's about really spirituality. And there's such important word that you use is healing, and that's to make whole. That's from the root of making whole. And I think that is very important in healing to make ourselves whole. Many times there's a lot of, we're out of balance. And when we go back to balance, that's when we can start healing. And there's many modalities to get back to balance, but they definitely, believe and believing in something, whether we call it a higher power, God, universe, whatever word is good for us, can really help in getting us to that balance in a state that is conducive to healing.
And this is not just simply, oh, whatever. Yeah, just believe in something, it'll become reality, kind of hogwash, as some will say. There's real science behind it.
Absolutely. I mean, when we believe that we're gonna get better with the treatment, just the belief in that, it's called actually placebo. It means to please or to placate. But the placebo effect is actually very powerful. It is about 50% of the time that it can work. If you believe it's gonna help you, if your physician or clinician believes it's gonna help you, or if together with the relationship you believe is gonna help you, that treatment is gonna heal you about 50% of the time or more. And it's very interesting that in the studies that are done every day today for any medication or any treatment we compare it to this placebo effect. So we're comparing it, is it better than placebo? But again, understanding that 50% of the time or more, people are getting better with what we would call a sugar pill or like no treatments. So how can that be when you're not getting, again, a medication, even a surgery or a treatment that you can get better? So there is definitely been many, many studies, and there's a very famous cardiologist, now that has passed away, Dr. Benson, who was at Harvard, really talking about this very fact in many of his books, one called Timeless Healing, but there's many others where he and his research showed this over and over, that by having a belief and also doing something he calls a relaxation response, which we can talk about, but is really basically either where you repeat a word that can be secular or religious if you are religious, and you will repeat this over and over for about 20 minutes. And that's basically what prayer is. Prayer is a mindfulness meditation where you repeat a word or a phrase, and that is going to change your physiology. It's going to change everything that is release and hormone standpoint. And again, it's going to get you to a place where we can heal. So there's definitely science behind it. Many, many studies, again, whether it's with Dr. Benson or others, showing that there is real power in faith and a calming place and repeating something that is important to you, which could be, again, secular or spiritual wise.
And I may get this wrong, but it's interesting that you say that repeating a certain phrase. I was just talking to a vascular surgeon the other day who says that he gives every single one of his patients, I think he said, a chapter in some book called Walk Like a Man. I can't remember what it is. And he said there's a powerful chapter in there. And he tells his patients that every single day he wants them to read this chapter, not just read it, but he wants them to say each and every word in their mind over and over again. And he says he sees remarkable results in terms of the patient's compliance with his orders for lifestyle modifications, just simply in that act of reading this chapter every single day. Whatever it is that's inspirational or motivational about it, it starts becoming part of this person and ends up somehow motivating them to become better partners in their care.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so much there that, we can dig into. I mean, words, I don't know what words these are, but words have power and they really can alter our physiology. There's a beautiful book called The Hidden Messages in Water, and it really talks about when water that is frozen and is made crystals is exposed to different words, whether it's love, gratitude, anger, or different music styles, whether it's classical or, some like rock band or something, how do these crystals then take shape? And it's beautifully illustrated in these photographs. And you can see the shape of these crystals of ice, and you can see the beautiful shapes when they're exposed to frequencies or words of love or gratitude, and when they're not. And, we're 70% water beings. So we are affected by the power of the words, by the frequency of the words. So again, if we are repeating words that are love-based, hopeful, affirming, they actually have a very healing effect of how our body responds, even to the molecular level or the water cellular level.
It's interesting for us with the Global PAD Association, and when we're dealing with patients who have peripheral artery disease, which is that poor circulation and mainly the legs, we find we choose our words very carefully in working with patients. We actually choose the words that they use initially to start the process in helping them to transition into more favorable words for healing. But it's interesting that I posted on on LinkedIn just the other day this experience that a patient had with a doctor who put her on deck for amputation. She wasn't okay with this amputation being the option for her. She came to us looking for a second opinion. We got her a second opinion. Patient ended up having these arteries opened up with the understanding through our love and support, and in partnership with this other doctor opening up those arteries, that she would actually be a partner in her care and start walking and doing strength training and getting on her rebounder. And she goes back, and I share the story of her going back to the original surgeon, excited about her progress. And he actually comes back and starts demeaning her with words like, "You are delusional to have done this." And when I posted this, another doctor came out with guns a-blazing, attacking me for going after this doctor for using such awful, demotivational words and disrespectful words, such as delusional, when dealing with a patient. And words do matter.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
amazing that the words that we had with this patient motivated them, encouraged them, inspired them. The love that we had for her just resonated versus this other doctor that was leading her down a path of misery. And she called me crying the next day just based on what this doctor's words were.
Yeah, I
And
mean, our
we had to
words.
bring her back up.
Yeah, our words do have a lot of power, and we definitely remember the words that are, told to us in a conversation, especially with a physician. What do they say? What were the words they used? Even years, decades later. So it's so important to be mindful how we use the words, how we structure our sentence, and even the space we give and the silence we give when we're giving either good news or bad news. It's important to give that space as well. And to allow patients to have the emotions, but never being condescending or rude to choices they've made because they may not be ours, but we can
Right.
always walk with a patient in partnership, even when we disagree. We are there to, the definition of physician is a healer and a teacher. And we really have to be those two, where we want to heal, we want to make whole, but we also want to teach and guide and support. And again, we may not be in the same place, but with understanding and love and compassion, I think we definitely can just walk each other to whatever our goals are without being ever demeaning.
Yeah, it was interesting that Marcia, who's listening in, is saying that your attention goes where energy flows. She says, thoughts do indeed become things. Energy flows where attention goes, and if energy is the currency of the cosmos, what remains? What are we thinking about? Right?
Absolutely. Like whatever we put our attention and our intention, that energy flows there. Absolutely. That is very, very insightful. And, our reality really becomes it starts with our mind, our thoughts. Everything we have physically or happens in our body started in the mind. And
Mhm.
it started with like energy that got blocked or energy that is flowing well. And we can talk about, like, if we're talking about legs and peripheral vascular disease, it is flow of blood, but that is energy. I mean, there's energy in blood, and all the red blood cells and the oxygen molecules. I mean, this is energy flowing to that area. So when that gets blocked, literally, and energetically, that's when we start having problems. So this is very insightful of a comment that was made. Absolutely.
And for those who don't know, Dr. Londoño is a holistic urologist. And I would imagine that this frame of mind, this way of thinking is something that you incorporate in every single consult with every single patient.
Yeah, it's absolutely so important to understand that we are not just body parts, we're not diseases, we're not just one thing, and that one part affects the whole because we are whole. So I cannot just talk to somebody and talk to them about their kidney or the kidney stone without understanding, everything, not only nutritionally, but their social support, transportation, what stresses them, everything is all related and is going to affect the healing. So we have to think about that. What are their goals? What is their purpose? What are their fears? How do they manage stress? What are they eating or not eating? Are they doing movement or not? How much water are they drinking? All this is so important for their overall well-being. And we have to address that if we want to get to that healing, if we want to reverse disease. If we want to just put band-aids or just give meds and move people along, then we could do it different ways. But I don't think that is where we're going to find healing in not just that disease state, but also affect the other parts of the body or reverse other diseases.
But this isn't something that you learned in general medical school in that textbook. At what point and what was the catalyst for adopting this mindset into your practice?
Yeah, that is absolutely true that there's definitely a lack of understanding just in nutrition 101. I went to UCLA, it's an excellent school, but that was not taught. Stress, trauma, and how it affects our body. That's just something that really wasn't. Or even, again, spirituality and how that affects. About, high 80 to 90%, 90, more than 90% of people served in the US believe in a God. And about 80% do pray daily to whatever, religious they do. So this is something important in most of the people's lives. So, we have to understand that that is part of, again, the whole, that is part of what's important to them. And, with spirituality or religion, if you want to have that, there's so much benefit because, this is usually a place where they can find connection. They can find, like maybe they're praying or they're repeating this words that calms their nervous system down. There could be music, and music is healing and uplifting as well. So there's a power of healing through just music. So you're exposed to music that could be healing. You're exposed to, these words that are repeated that calm your nervous system and the power of connection. In the recent book Together by the Surgeon General, talking about the health impacts, negative health impacts of loneliness, and that is more damaging than like smoking a pack of cigarettes. So it is so damaging to be separated, to be lonely, to not have that community. So, again, spirituality can be one way to do it. There's many ways to do it, but this is an important factor for many, many, many people. So we cannot forget that. And so we have to understand again, there's so many components to healing, and it's not just one, and we have to address those.
And I would imagine to continue to keep going along this path in your practice, that you must have had incredible stories that you experienced along your journey, one of which you shared recently, which caught my attention on LinkedIn, which sparked my reaching out to you to say, hey, I want you to be the first. We've got to share this story. Would you mind? You have the floor. Would you mind sharing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a lot more commonplace than we sort of think or pause to reflect on. But we're sort of always so busy. We have so many things to do. We have the next surgery to do, the next, that we can quickly and easily, sort of just brush it off. But what I shared in that post and that story was a recent, actually, my last patient of the year on New Year's Eve, a patient that had been bleeding, in his urine for a month already. It happened about a month prior, and he went home. But when they saw him in the ER, they did many tests, including a CT scan, and the CT scan showed what looked like a big mass in the bladder. So, just as a disclaimer, with a CT scan, you cannot see inside the bladder very well. You need to usually put a camera inside to look. So there's only two things that can be there, either a clot or a mass. But this gentleman went home to hopefully get follow-up. He did not. He stopped bleeding for a month, came back again bleeding. And again, another scan showed the same thing, this mass that actually was getting bigger, not smaller. But during the whole time, he had not bled at all. But when he was in the hospital, he, again, would not stop bleeding. We held his blood thinner medication. We put catheters to try to stop the bleeding. He continued to bleed. And so because he was getting more anemic, and he was frail, I decided to take him to surgery first to see what it is, and to remove what looked like a really large bladder tumor. Usually is cancer 99% of the time. So I was scheduled to take him, and I personally just felt an easy one because I had not seen him electively to see what it was, what should I prepare for, what else should I have ready for this operation. And I was feeling uneasy and, not too excited to do this on New Year's Eve, but, we had to take care of him. And probably about, an hour or so before the surgery, I really felt this complete sense of ease and peace and a knowingness that, things would be okay, that this was the right thing to do. And I really had this almost like crystal clear picture of somebody praying for me, which, is unusual. I don't really have ever had this sort of video screen or movie in my head of somebody physically doing that. So, I mean, I wasn't really thinking much of it. It just sort of happened. I'm getting ready. And when I went to speak to the patient's family and just, tell them like what we're going to do again, explain everything to them, and just ask them like, where should I meet you afterwards to update you? And I was leaving. And as I was leaving, the daughter told me, well, Dr. Londoño, I prayed for my father, and obviously I also prayed for you. And, I had to sort of do a little double take because I was like, I just felt that sensation that somebody was doing that. And I thanked her. I said, thank you very much. I definitely felt that. So, what, the whole thing is like, how do you feel that? How can you feel this peace or even the actual action? And to the beautiful part of the story as well was not just that, but when, I went in to the bladder, there was no tumor, there was no mass. And not only that, but there was nothing actively bleeding, like nothing. There wasn't even anything that can cauterize or stop. It was just completely just dry. Nothing, nothing, nothing. So, you know, of course, the mass could have always just been a clot that just wasn't coming out of the bladder, of course, but also just the fact that nothing was bleeding when it would not stop bleeding for 3, 4 days while he was in the hospital. So only in that moment it stopped. So there's a lot of things that, okay, we could call miraculous, we can call we don't understand, we can say, oh, I don't know, but I think that, the power truly of of prayer, when it's done also together, it's also amplified. We feel that energy, we feel that healing energy. We are definitely interconnected. There's no question about it. And, this is something that in quantum physics is talked about. It explained a lot, how we are interconnected and how these miracles or things can happen because of that interconnectedness between all of us. So it was just a beautiful story that, again, we could have just brushed off and gone on with my day, but I just felt it was important to sort of pause and be grateful. And, just not only grateful for somebody praying for me, but just grateful for the whole situation and just to think, like the awe of everyday life. It really can be beautiful if we stop and take notice of it.
Did you go back to that family member and find out what words she used in this prayer or what was going through her mind with this prayer that made it so powerful? I'm sure that's what everyone's asking right now as they're watching this and hearing the story.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what words they use. I know that they were actually together and they actually were delayed to come down to the surgery area because they were all praying together as a family. So there's a lot of people in the room praying for the patient together. So they were delayed because they were doing that. And our orderly that went to get the patient, did not want to disturb him to say, hurry up, we need to get you down. The surgeon's waiting because they were praying. And so, I also knew there was a delay, but I also knew, they must be praying. Again, I sort of had this thought. I said, it's okay. 20 minutes later, they did come down, but I just let them because I felt that was important. And also, if anything goes wrong, I want that time with the family to be there to be special and not be rushed. So, yes, I could be doing a lot of things, but that time with family before surgery is very important. And so I wanted to respect that.
Was this a first medical mystery miracle that you've experienced in your career?
No, I mean, I think there's many, 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 I think that's just a beautiful one. But I mean, I have patients that again, we cannot say why do they not become metastatic with their cancer diagnosis? Like, how could that be when we know if they don't do this XY treatment, their survival would be very, very low, or they would be widely metastatic. And I have another patient that, it's been 2018 was the first time I diagnosed her with this muscle invasive bladder cancer. And lo and behold, we're in 2025. She's non-metastatic. She's doing well. Yeah, she's had local recurrences, but she is not metastatic or dead, and I always, ask her, like, what are you doing? Like, what is your secret? And she always tells me, well, it's you, Dr. Londoño, and it's God. And, I don't take the credit for it because I don't think I am the healer. I think I'm an instrument of healing. I am not the one that cures. I think that I'm an instrument, and also the person themselves, just like your patient, they're the ones that heal themselves. Their body has this innate wellness of healing. So I do believe their own body will and can. And also as physicians or clinicians, we are instruments to guide or to help, but we are not truly the healers.
One of my executive coaches always says to me, you are the facilitator of the wellness the patient's desire. But I think taking it to another level in what you're saying is you're not necessarily the facilitator, they're the facilitator, and you're an instrument to be used in their facilitation of the wellness they desire.
Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, I am, it goes through me. I am an instrument, whether it's, again, the technical skills, inspiration, the intuition of like, maybe I should go here, or maybe I should not do this. In science and medicine, not everything's black and white. There is a gray zone where you have to have a hunch, a gut feeling, they call it, intuition of like, what should I do for this patient? Because it's not black and white. And so you have to go with a sense of like, what should I do in this situation? And that is annoying that, again, where is it coming from? Where is this sense of this is the path to take coming from? And again, many times in medicine, people or physicians don't want to uh, accept or acknowledge that is so, because we want to be the ones that have all the knowledge, that have all the answers, that know everything. But that really is like a huge ego where we have to be humble and realize we don't have all the knowledge. We're always students. We always can learn from patients, we can learn from interactions, we can learn obviously from books, from experience, but we're always learning and we don't have all the answers.
It's interesting. There's a poster behind you, and I almost feel like that's a visual representation of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I do love that it's a underwater photography and picture, but I love it because I feel that's how we should be with everything in life. We should be supportive. We should be lifting people up. They're going up in the water towards the light, and I think that is how we should act with each other. Whether we're women, whether we are patients and physicians, we should be supportive. We should be taking people towards the light, whatever that is, and towards joy and towards love. And I think that is a very powerful thing to do, to be loving and to be supportive instead of competitive and divisive and hateful or demeaning. I mean, those are not good for anybody, but definitely if we're in a healing space and a medical space, those words, as we talked about, those actions, those spaces really have to be different to truly be in a better place.
I think that that's a great way to end our very first episode of Faith and Healing. We appreciate you so much. Dr. Diana Londoño, any patient who comes to you is very, very lucky. And they do, in fact, get an entire holistic approach to care in urology. And I love, and I'm curious, just as we close out here, at what point in your career did you end up adding holistic urologist to your title?
Yeah, there's a recent change because I think it really encompassed, what I want to make sure I provide to my patients. And, it was really just a label that was already been there so long, but I never sort of labeled it. But I think it was important just to show that that is something that's important to me as I take care of patients, to not divide them into parts, to not divide them into diseases, but understand that we are whole. And if I want to heal, which is my goal, again, the definition of healing is to make whole. So I want to make my patients whole, bring them to balance.